There has been a sophisticated cyber operation. Over 1,000 Hezbollah fighters and affiliates are injured after their communication pagers reportedly exploded across Lebanon.
The detonation of the pagers is already being deemed as the biggest security breach.
Citizens go about daily work at a supermarket. All of a sudden, a man's bag explodes. In another video, a person reaches for his pager to read it. It blows up in his face. Images of pagers exploding on the belt clips of the Lebanese armed group Hezbollah operatives went viral. Injuries are rampant. One of the videos shows the intensity of these pager blasts. Pagers in southern Lebanon were targets, also in the southern suburbs of Beirut, known as the Hiyeh and the eastern Bekaa Valley. All these areas are Hezbollah strongholds. But the victims were not all Hezbollah activists. Among the injured were children, office-goers, and more. Iran's ambassador to Lebanon was also among those who were injured. At least 12 people were killed and more than 2,300 people were injured. Overwhelming hospitals.
Yesterday, as we were treating patients, just casually, just like any other normal day, we received one wounded patient into the ER. He was screaming that he picked something from the ground and it bombed into his face. We saw his hands, they were bandaged, they were all blood. We didn't understand what was happening. At that moment, we started receiving text messages about pagers exploding. Again, we were scared. We had pagers in the hospital. So just like that, at that moment, all pagers in the hospital were shut down.
Most of the injuries, they were like the eye and the face, around the eye, and eye surgeons were under enormous pressure to meet the need.
تنحط بنفس الموقف. نفس المشهد من 4 سنين وكنا بنفس المسؤولية. بنتمنى تبقى هيدي النهاية. كنت عم بشوف بكل مريض جزء من لبنان. كل مريض كنت عم بحاول. يعني كل مريض كنت عم بحاول رمم وكنت عم بحاول رمم شيء من لبنان.
A day later came another shocker. These are the scenes of the last rites of Hezbollah members who were killed in a pager blast in Lebanon. Even as the funeral procession was underway, a walkie-talkie exploded. From Beirut to Baalbek, a series of walkie-talkie blasts ripped through multiple locations in Lebanon. Listen to this clip. You can hear the sound of Hezbollah-linked communication devices exploding in Beirut. Electronic gadgets kept in trouser pockets, on belts, in the kitchen, everything was on target. Ordinary communication devices turned into miniature grenades. At least 20 people were killed and more than 600 injured. The recent explosions have added a new layer to the Israel-Hamas war, marked by deadly Israeli airstrikes and Hezbollah's attacks on northern Israel. No Israeli officials have claimed responsibility for the Gadget explosions, which Hezbollah attributed to Israel. Is this a new brand of warfare that the world is witnessing? There's nothing entirely new about sabotaging phones or planting bombs. Terrorists and spy agencies have used these tactics earlier, as well as in history. But what was different this time around was the sheer scale of explosives that blew up at the same time.
At the end of the day, it's a combination of three elements that work perfectly, which is intelligence on one hand, technology on the other, and the operational capabilities. This combination of the three made this event, this operation successful. And I think what is important to mention is that it was directed on Hezbollah operative, not on any civilians. It might happen that one or two civilians were close and were injured, but the purpose of the operation was directed to operatives of Hezbollah.
This kind of operation was never seen in the region, that from afar there is actually an operational achievement to damage 3,000 hands that can pull the trigger and press the button of launching rockets to over here. Towards Israel. It is definitely an intelligence infiltration that is overwhelming capability. But I think the greatest achievement here is the confusion that it created among Hezbollah, the psychological damage among Hezbollah, and the fact that somebody can cause that much of a damage without even invading into Lebanon.
Images of the exploded walkie-talkies showed labels with ICOM and Made in Japan and resembled the firm's model ICV-82 device. However, the Japanese company said that it was not possible to confirm whether the radio product reportedly related to the explosions was shipped by them. They added that the batteries required to operate the device were discontinued about 10 years ago.
I have a picture of the device that exploded in black and white printed here. The hologram sticker should be here. The fact that the sticker is not on here means we cannot determine if it's genuine. But for this model, we did not put hologram stickers from the start. There was a period when we didn't add holograms. So if this device comes from that time, we cannot eliminate the possibility that it may be our product.
Sources say the handheld radios were purchased by Hezbollah 5 months ago, around the same time as a shipment of the pagers that were detonated. Images of destroyed communication devices showed a format and stickers on the back that were consistent with pagers made by Gold Apollo, a Taiwanese manufacturer of wireless paging systems. However, Taiwan's economy minister said that the components used in thousands of these pagers were not made in Taiwan, and that they were made by a Budapest-based company, BAC, which has a license to use its brand.
The situation as we understand it is that all the components in the pagers produced by this company, Gold Apollo, will not explode. Roughly during the last 2 years, this company has exported about 260,000 pagers. There has never been any explosion. So we can determine that the pagers produced in Taiwan do not explode.
According to a senior Lebanese security source and other information, explosives inside the devices were planted by Israel's Mossad spy agency. So, did Israeli spies remotely detonate explosives or plant them in a Hezbollah order of 5,000 pagers before they entered Lebanon?
Electronic devices such as cell phones and pagers are typically not manufactured in Lebanon or Syria or Iran. They're getting these products, Hezbollah is getting these products from overseas manufacturers. And it is likely that Western entities have the ability to influence the supply chain, to put it mildly. I mean, we have factories in the United States, there are factories in China. Some of these devices are made by American companies. It is possible that Western governments intentionally sabotage this particular line of pagers.
Pagers are small electronic devices that can receive and display text messages. Unlike cell phones, pager devices depend on radio signals to transmit information. These wireless, low-tech means of communication lost popularity in the 90s with the emergence of mobile phones, but were being used by Hezbollah to evade Israeli tracking of their movements. Experts have attributed the explosions to supply chain interference. It is believed that small explosive devices were installed into these pager devices even before they were delivered to Hezbollah. It is possible that the explosives were remotely triggered, likely by using a radio signal. The group failed to stop the attacks as these exploded pagers were from a new brand the group had not used before. These set of pagers were procured by Hezbollah over 6 months ago.
Explosive devices require 5 main components. You need a container, a battery, a triggering device, a detonator, and an explosive charge. In this particular case, the pager already, typical pager will already have the first 3 of this list. Okay, so they needed to have a detonator and an explosive charge. There is no single entity controlling the full supply chain. Okay? So if we take the whole process of actually building an electronic product, you start off by actually sourcing out some pre-designed component or IP, depending on what you're building, because most likely you're not going to build everything from scratch. You're going to use some pre-existing component. Okay, so there is a risk there. Some of these components could be faulty, could be malicious.
2 rounds of attacks coming so close together have left many in Lebanon worried, both on the electronic devices in warfare and the state of the country's security situation. Devices exploded in cities including Beirut and its southern suburbs, Hermel, Baalbek, Saida, Nabatea, Tyre, Naqoura, and Marjayoun. Residents in Lebanon's capital, Beirut, express concern over their personal electronic devices. Samal Al-Masri, owner of a mobile phone shop in Beirut, believes the event has negatively impacted sales.
This strike especially, the blow to Hezbollah, has greatly affected our sales, especially for phones. Everyone is now throwing their phones out of their hands. They're all afraid. They feel like all phones are being monitored, and this has affected us a lot.
Nabil Bala, a telecommunications engineer, noted a significant shift in customer behavior. He says the real issue lies with specific products that may have been interfered with.
After what happened, the reaction has not been very clear, but I received numerous calls from customers asking how to hide their devices and what precautions to take. whether to hide their devices to take out the battery. You know, people fear what they don't understand. Today, the devices in the market are not connected to what happened. The problem is with specific devices going to specific people. It was not distributed in the market or amongst the traders and institutions.
Israeli officials are silent on the simultaneous explosions of communications devices used by Iran-backed Lebanese militant group. However, the security sources told Reuters that Unit 8200, a military unit that is not part of Mossad, was involved in the development stage of the operation against Hezbollah. This operation was over a year in the making. The source said Unit 8200 was involved in the technical side of testing how they would insert explosive material into the manufacturing process.
In Israel, we have many threats around us, and the military is not as big as needed to protect the entire border, so alerting is super important. So the unit started with the main focus of being an alerting unit, classical SIGINT unit, signal intelligence unit, then morphed into a cyber operation, probably one of the best cyber operations worldwide. And of course, you can find there a lot of different professions from cyber to software to data, big data, AI, and more. Probably the most important part of the unit culture is a can-do attitude. So an attitude that says, no matter how big the task is, no matter how lack of resources I am and how much I don't have any idea how I can pull this off, everything that's put to my table, I will be able to do.
The attack using gadgets, or perhaps the worst security breach in Lebanon's history. Even before the Lebanon government and Hezbollah dived deep into the issue, on the 20th of September, Israel killed a top Hezbollah commander and other senior figures in the organization in an airstrike in Beirut. Israel has ramped up its airstrikes against Hezbollah and has said it would keep up pressure on the armed group. On the 23rd of September, according to the Lebanese authorities, more than 500 people were killed, marking the deadliest day of Israeli bombardment of the country since Israel's 34-day war with Hezbollah in 2006. The recent attacks have sent tens of thousands of people fleeing for safety. An all-out war could create instability across West Asia, in addition to a devastating war in Gaza, which shows no sign of easing. But it is the new warfare that many believe can change the tide in the future. In many ways, the recent operations against Hezbollah are an echo of tactics seen earlier. In a striking parallel with past operations, Israeli intelligence, particularly Mossad, has demonstrated its adaptability by utilizing a relic from the 90s, using pagers. This comes 28 years after the assassination of Yahya Ayash, the notorious Hamas bomb maker known for pioneering mobile bombing techniques. On October 19, 1994, a bombing on Tel Aviv's Route 5 killed 21 people and injured 50. The attack was carried out by Saleh Abdelrahim al-Soui. He executed a deadly plan, detonating 20 kilograms of TNT hidden inside a landmine in his bag. The explosion was catastrophic, marking it as the deadliest bombing in Israel at the time. Saleh was not the mastermind of the attack. It was 28-year-old Yahya Ayash, known as the Engineer. Ayash's methods were infamous. He would craft bombs using everyday items, gaining a fearsome reputation in the Palestinian liberation movement. Yahya was responsible for deaths of some 150 Israelis. In 1996, Israeli intelligence planted an explosive device in Yahya's cell phone. As Yahya called up his father, the phone rang on the other side. His words, "How are you, father?" were his last. Before he could hear his father, the device exploded, resulting in Yahya's immediate death.
It is important to keep in mind that nearly 3 decades ago, Israel managed to assassinate the main designer of bombs for Hamas. His name was Yahya Ayyash. He was known by the moniker the engineer because of those skills. And he was killed when his cell phone exploded, apparently because a small amount of explosives had been put in the device and were detonated by a remote control from an airplane flying over Gaza, listening in to make sure it was his voice on the phone at the time that it was detonated.
Last year, in March, an Ecuadorian journalist, Lenin Arteida, received a USB drive in a package addressed to him. Without thinking much, Arteida unpacked and plugged the device into his computer. The device exploded. The incident happened in the newsroom of Ecuavisa TV in Guayaquil. Lenin Arteida suffered minor injuries in the blast. This was not an isolated incident. At least 5 similar envelopes were sent to media houses in Ecuador around the same time. The envelopes sent to journalists had similar characteristics and the same contents. The incident led Ecuadorian authorities to open a terrorism investigation.
It's the same structure, the same composition, and their artifacts made to create damage. This is an absolutely clear message to shut journalists who have expressed themselves strongly.
Ecuador, that is located between Colombia and Peru in South America, is among the world's largest cocaine-producing countries. It is a strategic drug smuggling route due to its long Pacific coastline and large shipping and fishing fleets. Experts say criminal gangs inspired by lucrative links to Mexican drug cartels are using terror tactics to intimidate authorities, as the country of nearly 18 million teeters on the edge of becoming a narco state. Also in 2023, the U.S. Naval Criminal Investigative Service said it was investigating after multiple Navy personnel reported receiving unsolicited smartwatches that could be installed with data-stealing malicious software. The Army warned publicly that service members across the military had reported receiving the devices in their mail. While it was unclear who was sending the suspicious watches, the devices were indicative of counterintelligence and cyber threats. The wider dimensions of the recent pager and walkie-talkie incidents in Lebanon bear a close resemblance of the last year of the war in Gaza. Israel has issued warnings to civilians, similar to those issued in Gaza, to evacuate areas about to be attacked. Israel also accuses Hezbollah, much like it accuses Hamas, of using civilians as human shields. As Israeli airstrikes continue to shatter Lebanon, civilians are struggling to provide for their families in a wrecked economy. Fear rises on both sides of the conflict. This is the most dangerous crisis in the long year of war since Hamas attacked Israel, and at the moment there are visible signals of the hostilities escalating into something much worse.